Okay, everybody, I got 6 o'clock. We're going to start. We don't have anybody back there doing the computer things, but I want you to watch something. We're going to put the first slide up now. And then the first discussion question now. There you go. There's nobody back there. That's amazing. It's witchcraft. It's Mike. So, take some time at your table, whoever you're sitting with, and answer that question. What do you think it takes to stay in love?
I know I should probably get here. And I guess we're getting a divorce tomorrow because that's
Let me hear your answers. The packed table right back here. What'd y'all say? What's it take? Doing the dishes. You or her? The guy. As long as the guy does the dishes. That was really good. That was. It's good. 3-person table. What did y'all say? Adapting to change. Does that sound like a tactical security guy right there or what? So true. So true. Good. How about back there, right behind the 3-person table? What'd y'all say? Patience and forgiveness. Those are fun. Come naturally to you? Not me either. How about right here? What'd y'all say? It's a choice. What's it take to stay in love? You choose to. I like that. How about y'all? Communication. It's good. What'd y'all say? Keep dating. That's a great thought. I'm really interested in this table because my wife's sitting over there. Well, that's yesterday. You missed it. What'd y'all say?
I said you have to find what I need
Hmm.
love.
Interesting. That's good. Try to be lovable. Yeah, that's good. Here's the next question. Anytime now, it's going to pop up. Go back. There you go. Why don't more couples stay in love? Chris just answered it for all of us. Talk amongst yourselves, though. we're going to start with this table because I'm hearing some interesting things. So what do y'all, I would like to hear your answers. Why don't more couples stay in love? What'd y'all come up with? They don't have a what? They don't have a heart-shaped bathtub. We don't want to hear it. Should we vote? How many of you want to hear Chris's heart-shaped tub story? Raise your hand. And how many of you would rather die than hear Chris's heart? It's pretty close. Complacency.
Because we didn't ride off into the sunset, we rode off life.
Yep. What'd you guys say? Mm-hmm. Learned helplessness. Explain. Wow. That's profound, isn't it? Yeah. How about you guys? What'd you come up with? Just do the dang dishes. Does somebody over there need to hire Mary Maids? What's going on at y'all's table? Wow. That's good. I mean, that's bad, but that's a good answer. Boom. We're going to talk about that tonight. It's really good. How about back in the back? What'd y'all come up with? For sure. For sure. All right, let's go one more discussion question and then we'll jump in. Oh, hi, Terry. How are you? Okay. Chime in. Yeah. Thanks, Terry. Let's look at the next one. What would you have to do to love your spouse more 5 years from now than you do today? That might be a little more difficult to answer, but I want you to answer it. Do the dishes. Check. Did you find that question hard to answer? Is that a little more difficult to answer? How many of you married more than 25 years in the room? How many of you married less than 2? Less than 2 years. How long have y'all been married? Yeah. You and the Jordans. 1 year, a year. Yeah. I was going to say, it was like in the fall. 1 year Sunday, y'all been married 9 months, a year, 8 months. What do you think? When you get to your 5th anniversary, I mean, it's hard to imagine being more in love with Savannah ever than you are today. But 5 years from now, I want you to be. So how do you get there? Did you come up with an answer?
I think commitment, like just going through a lot of life experiences. Like I can, we first started dating, that love that we had before I was saved, it was love, right? Love. So now has definitely grown, not only because God bringing me to Himself, but also experiences I had. So I can do it. So commitment.
Commitment. It's good. Barry, Sarah, what do y'all say? A year from now, a year from next week, a year from Sunday, 5 years from now, how do you love each other more? That's really good. Really good. Those of you married more than 25 years, how'd they do? Those are good answers, right? Those are really good answers. Well, the next question is, and we've already talked about it, is it even possible to stay in love? Is it possible to love your spouse more 5 years from now than it is today? Absolutely. Is it possible for you to have a more fulfilling, satisfying, exciting, happy marriage 10 years from now than you do today? Absolutely. I believe it is with all my heart. I believe all of you are candidates, and it's what I want for you. That's why we're talking about it. We hope to give you some skills, some practical things tonight that will help you. I think tonight's might just be one of the most powerful things you could add to your tool belt in your marriage, if you can figure out a way to do it practically. But I want to start with a video. I think there's a video, Terry.
It's an OR gate. So basically, there's two inputs to a gate. There's A and B. And if an AND gate says if both inputs are true, A is true and B is true, then the output is true. And if either one is false, the output is false. A has to be true and B has to be true. An OR gate says if either one is true, the output's true. And only when both inputs are false is the output false. Not anything funny in there. But I've come up with the marriage logic map. This is the key to happiness. These ladies down there went, oh, we don't like where this is going. This, I'm going to preface this by saying, well, I'll get to it. But I started at the most obvious thing. There's two inputs, Dawn and Laura's, my wife Laura. Okay, if I'm wrong and Laura's right, this is a really easy one. Laura's right. That's simple. Thank you very much. That one seemed obvious to me. Believe it or not, from here, it gets complicated. Okay, if we're both right, it doesn't matter. Laura's right. Thank you very much. That's the key. I would rather be happy than be right. That's what I'm... If I'm right and Laura's wrong, doesn't matter. Laura's still right. And if we're both wrong, Donna's wrong. If you're a single guy, take out your phone and take a photo of this. You're going to need to know it someday. I'd rather be happy than be right. That's what I want.
I've seen that video 20 times. I hate it. Every time I watch it, I hate it more. Makes you laugh. It's kind of silly. Is that a marriage he's talking about? I sat down not too long ago with a couple, and they were about to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary, which is, that's a long time to be married. And I said to the guy, you know, I would like to make it to 60. I want to be happy when I'm been married 60 years. How do I do it? What's your secret? Here's what he said. I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget. I just do what she says. And he was dead serious. And I went, that's funny, really, tell me. No, I just say, yes, dear, and do what she says. That's not a marriage, is it, BC? What is it? Dictatorship. It's a benevolent dictatorship. Thank you. I have that in my notes. This is not a marriage. It is a benevolent dictatorship. That's not the way marriage works, is it? But we all laugh at that. We all think, oh, that's cute. And some of us are going to say that. I just do what my wife says. Yes, dear. That's the secret. It's not. It's not the secret. That's not how marriage works. Marriage is not master and servant. Marriage is partnership. 100% of you, 100% of your spouse. So that brings us to Mr. and Mrs. Tumbler. If you weren't here last week, Mr. Tumbler, Mrs. Tumbler. And they're back this week because they need help. They are messed up. And the reason is, just like in your marriage, they keep bumping into each other. And when they do, all this stuff keeps coming out. You know how it works, right? Everything in you is your experiences, what you saw in your parents' marriage, your first marriage, the ex, the kids, the schedule, all that's in you, everything you've ever experienced, that's you. It's Mr. and Mrs. Tumbler. And you're going to bump into your spouse, you're going to disagree, you're going to have arguments, and when you do, stuff's going to come out, and your natural tendency is just to, why'd you bump me? Why'd you do that? But the reason stuff came out of you was because it's what's in you, right? Talked about that last week. And I think it's important that we review this thought, that whatever is inside of you always comes out in the relationships that are most important to you. Have you noticed that? You can fake it with some friends, you can fake it at work, but whatever's in there is going to come out of you in your marriage, in your parenting, in your close friendships, because you can be real. And whatever's in there is coming out. And when stuff comes out of you, you tend to blame someone else, but the truth is that's what's in you. And then we kind of closed last week by saying most of the things you think are marriage problems are really heart problems. It's what's in you. And that your ability to stay in love has as much to do with the condition of your own heart as the behavior of your spouse. So it really is. I think it was y'all's table. What do I have to do to stay in love or be more in love 5 years from now than I am today? And one of you said therapy. Yeah. How many of you have done marriage counseling? Because I have. Sometimes you just got to do what it takes. That's called being intentional. And I think that was a great answer. Because it's really about you, what you contribute to your marriage, not the behavior of your spouse. So this week, we are going to look at one decision that has been proven scientifically, believe it or not, in couples that love each other. They make this decision over and over and over and over. It is a pattern in their lives. One decision that has incredible power to help you stay in love. And 10 years from now, love your spouse more than you do today. One decision that can take your marriage to new levels of happiness. And I want to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. It's going to be on the Bible vision. It's already there. Right there in that sentence, don't check out. Listen, right there in that paragraph is the one decision. There's a lot of amazing things that Paul is about to say. But there's one thing in there that is a game changer. Here's what Paul said. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Now, before you show them, Terry, don't show them yet. I want to ask you, which one of those do you think is the game changer? They're all great, right? They're all really important, and we need to know them. But one of those is a game changer. Keeps no record of wrongs. That's a good guess. Never gives up. That's a great guess. Perseveres. That's a great guess. Protects. Here's what you're doing. You are doing what most of us do, and you're jumping to the easy ones. Those are all the easy ones. What's the hardest one on there? Disagree. Really? Well, I think you're wrong. I could be wrong, but I think you're wrong. I think the most difficult one on there, and the one that's a game changer, and the one scientifically proven to improve your marriage is always trusts. Always trusts. And the reason I say that's the hardest one is because I'm not even sure that's a good idea. To always trust. But what if they're a liar? What if they have a past? What if they failed you before? Always trust? I think that's the hardest one, because what you guys said, life happens. You just kind of cruise into life and you get to marriage. This is true for every relationship, by the way, but specifically for marriage. You're going to get to a point where what you expect is not what you experience. Anybody been there? We're going to get to talking about that in a second. But here's the way the Amplified Bible translates that statement. Love is ever ready to believe the best. NIV said, always trusts. The Amplified Bible says, it's always or ever ready to believe the best. So love in your marriage, the game changer in your marriage is to learn to always believe the best about your spouse. Always believe the best. In every relationship you ever have, there's going to be a gap between what you expect and what you experience. Like you're going to expect, I know some of you expect, my husband's going to work hard and earn good money for me, and we're going to have a nice house. But that's not always what you experience, is it? I expect the house to be clean and the dishes to be done, dang it, when I get home. Apparently not being experienced. That's those other guys. I know. I expect sex every night and in the mornings. Experiencing that? I expected her to stay home with the kids, but she had to get a job so we could live. I expected things just to stay the way they were, but they didn't. You're always, in every relationship, going to have a gap. Something's going to happen, and what you experience is not what you expected. You with me in this? Does this make sense? Can you think of a time in your life when that happened? All the time, every day, right? That's something that happens if you have a relationship with a human. Come on, talk to me. You expected dinner at 5, and what you experienced was, dude, dinner was way too late. That's real. That's totally real. That's all. That's a rookie mistake you're making sharing that publicly, but it's a totally real answer, and I appreciate it. Because we all have those, right? We all have, I expected my spouse to do or be a certain way, certain thing, but that's not what I'm experiencing. And without thinking about it, your first reaction is usually to assume the worst about them. Well, she's never going to have my dinner ready at 5 o'clock. He's just like his daddy. He's always going to be like that. It's really easy. The default in you, the thing that takes no effort, is when there's a gap between what you expect and what you experience. The thing that takes no effort and you can just fall into every time is to just assume the worst about them, to think badly about them, to be disappointed in them. It takes no effort to do that. When you choose, or what you choose to put in that gap, will determine the destiny and the direction of your marriage. Every time there's a gap between what you expect and what you're experiencing, what you choose to fill that gap with, it's going to determine where your marriage ends up. Your attitude towards your spouse is completely dependent upon what you put in the gap. The way you think about your spouse, your attitude towards them, is 100% dependent upon how you react when what you expect is not what you experience. What you put in the gap begins in your mind, but it eventually always shows up in your words, your attitudes, and your actions. So you experience something you weren't expecting and you think something, you can't keep that in there forever. Sooner or later, what you're thinking is going to come out in the words you use and the way you treat your spouse. Somebody told me last week, and I think this is true, there's another option to Mr. and Mrs. Tumbler. They could just put a lid on it. And that's true. You can just put a lid on stuff. For a while, the lids don't stay. This one don't even fit. There's so much experience in there. Stuffing stuff down and not saying anything and just packing it in, putting a lid on it, only works temporarily. You know that. Sooner or later, what's in there is coming out of there. And what you put in the gap sooner or later is going to show up in your marriage. And there are two things that determine what you put in the gap. Two things determine what you put in there. One, what you see, what's happening in your marriage and what has happened in your marriage. That's what you see. And what's in you. Those are the two things that go into your decision, what you put in the gap. What you're currently experiencing, what you're seeing, what you have seen in the past, and all that stuff that's in you. That's what's determining what you put in that gap. And you have two options for filling the gap. You can assume the worst or believe the best. Those are the only two options. When what you experience is not what you expected, your only two options for filling that gap are to think poorly of him or to think highly of him. To look for the bad in her or to look for the good in her. Those are your only two options. Assume the worst or believe the best. Which do you tend to do most? Nobody wants to talk about that. But if you don't know, like if you just can't, well, I know what it is. Your spouse knows. If you turn to them right now, and I won't make you, but if you turn to them right now and say, well, which one do I do? They would not hesitate to tell you. They know. Nervous laughter because, yep, I can tell you right now what you do. We all know. I mean, I know my spouse's reaction when I don't meet her expectations. I can tell you what it's going to be because I've experienced it for almost 30 years. 9 times out of 10, she believes the best about me, even when I haven't deserved it, earned it, or justified it. She comes up with a really generous explanation for my stupidity. She does. Am I right? I know if I don't meet her expectations tonight, in her brain, she's going to come up with a really good reason why I didn't. And it's not going to be because he's a jerk, because he's lazy, because he never does or he never will. That's not what she's thinking. She's thinking something different. She's looking for the best possible explanation. It's just what she does. Because we have made a decision to always put believing the best in this gap when what I experience is not what I expected. And the truth is, and scientists have proven this, and we're going to look at it, people who stay in love have learned to choose to believe the best. It's a skill you can learn. Do y'all know who Marcus Buckingham is? If you don't know who Marcus Buckingham is, you should look into him. He's brilliant. He's one of our nation's best minds. He's a scientist, he's an author, he's a thinker. He's done some incredible research on just about every topic. He wrote a book called The One Thing You Need to Know. And he's got some suggestions there, and they're already up there, but what he summarizes when it comes to marriage is believing the best about your spouse creates security. Security fosters intimacy, and love grows out of intimacy. So just believing the best, after interviewing hundreds of couples, that one thing, believing the best about your spouse, has set up couples to be in love forever. And he makes this suggestion at the end of this chapter. Find the most generous explanation for each other's behavior and then believe it. This guy is not a Christian. He's not writing from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He's done the research and he says, hey, if you want to have a happy marriage, learn to believe the best about your spouse. And he gives some great examples. She's not impatient, she's intense. That's a great, generous answer for behavior. He's not insensitive, he's just really focused. Do you see the difference? One is assuming the worst, the other is finding a generous explanation. And those things lead to happiness. The happiest couples have learned to fill in this gap by believing a generous explanation for behavior. My question to you is, and I want you to talk about this at your tables, why is that so hard to do? Or maybe it's not for you, but I think for most human beings, it is hard to consistently find a generous explanation for behavior that disappoints you. Why do you think that's so hard? And I want you to talk about it for reals. With y'all's table, what'd you come up with? Why is that so hard to do?
When you lack communication about your spouses, when they drop something that you expected them to do, you don't communicate it, you don't sit down and say, why did you do this? Making excuses, start to get frustrated, and then with lack of blow up. Get that, then find a ground.
It's good. What'd y'all say? This table. Wow. The stuff that's in us.
20 minutes late, so we already got him a new woman and new family. And
That's real. That's for real. Absolutely. How about back in the back? What'd y'all say? Yeah? You said yes? Yeah. How about y'all? What'd y'all come up with? Hmm. So true. Yeah. How about y'all? What y'all come up with? Trust? Yeah, it's hard to trust.
I don't think it's natural instinct not to praise your behaviors and actions you don't like.
Right?
Natural instinct is critical of it.
Good
What
word.
you said earlier was that if like you're rewarding bad behavior.
Hang on to that thought because we're about to address that. Yeah. What'd y'all come up with? No? No answers to that one? You really didn't. They're like, not gonna see.
I feel like it's probably human nature defaulting to being negative versus being positive. It's default. Go to.
Yep. Say that again. Yep. What'd y'all say? Why is it so hard? Oh, we already got you. Y'all, thank you. Huh. Yeah. I'm with you on this. Sometimes choosing to do this can feel like you're rewarding something bad or you're ignoring reality. So this next slide, I really want you to look at that. Believing the best does not mean ignoring reality, overlooking sin, or avoiding difficult conversations. It doesn't mean that you Pollyanna everything in your relationship, where everything's fine and great and roses and rainbows and gumdrops and unicorns, everything's fine when it's not. That's not what believing the best means. Here's what it means. It means the next time you experience something you weren't expecting, before you react, before you speak, before you text, before you do anything, just in your brain, choose to believe the best about your spouse. Now, it may turn out after you have the awkward conversation or confront the sin or look at some reality that your generous explanation was dead wrong. But you've set yourself up and you've set that relationship up for a quick healing and a quick resolution just because in your brain, your first thought was not, he's always, she never, here we go again. But your first thought was something believing the best. You're already in the right mindset to resolve whatever it is in a healthy way. Does that make sense? So it's not ignoring the truth and it's not rewarding bad behavior. It's just setting yourself up for success and learning to believe the best about your spouse. Now, here's a warning for you. Several warnings that you need to be aware of when it comes to assuming the worst. Assuming the worst about your spouse. If you and your spouse are in a cycle of assuming the worst, the cycle feeds itself. It just goes round and around and around and around. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And bigger than that is you are losing the most important relationship you have. If you're in that cycle of there's a gap, I'm going to assume the worst, and you just continue to do that, you are pushing your spouse away. Another warning, every time you choose to assume the worst, you become a willing participant in the demise of your marriage. Every time. I suspect that none of you, when you stood at some altar or in some courthouse or in somebody's backyard, wherever it was that you got married, I suspect none of you standing there exchanging vows thought, I am going to mess this up. And I'm going to do it on purpose. And I'm going to push you away for years. And 5 years from now, we're going to wonder, why did we ever get married? Any of you think that when you were getting married on your marriage? Did you think that a year ago? Heck no, nobody goes into marriage thinking, I'm going to ruin this. It's going to be fun. But every time there's a gap and you choose to assume the worst, you are pushing your marriage, your spouse aside. You're pushing them away. You're contributing to the demise of your marriage. Another warning. You will never improve your marriage by trying to eliminate the gap. Here's why. The only way to eliminate the gap between what I expect and what I experience is somebody's got to lay down the law. Here's the new rules in our marriage. You're never going there again. If you do, we're done. Here's the new rule. If I ever see you do this again, you ain't getting none of this. Sorry. Here's the new rule. See, when there's a gap and you try to eliminate the gap, all you're trying to do is control the relationship. Relationships cannot be controlled. You can try, and some of you are trying, I know. You can't. You cannot control. Passive-aggressive control, aggressive control, it just does not work in marriage. It sets you up for failure. When you try to eliminate the gap by controlling your spouse or with passive-aggressive manipulation, you create an extremely unhealthy relationship, a relationship fueled by fear, not love. You can improve your marriage by realizing there's always going to be a gap, and the best things you can do is fill in that gap first by believing the best. You with me? Does this make sense? Hard to do. When you choose to believe the best, you create an environment of acceptance. When you believe the best, you are cultivating an environment of acceptance, and your heart, man or woman, it does not matter, is drawn towards acceptance. Nobody likes to go be with people that don't accept them, especially at home. Your heart is drawn towards acceptance, and you can create an accepting house just by learning to believe the best about your spouse. And my wife, man, she jumped ahead of me because this is how we're going to close. Jesus said in Luke chapter 6, verse 31, you might have learned this as the golden rule. He said, do to others as you would have them do to you. What if that wasn't a kindergarten classroom rule? What if you applied that in your marriage? Because here's what I know about you for sure, because I know it about me. When I mess up, when I don't meet her expectations, I want her to believe the best about me. That's what I want her to not question my motives, not question who I am or my choices. I just want her first reaction to be just believe the best about me. So if I expect that of her, if that's what I want from her, then I have to give that back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Last slide. You can change your story, you can change the destiny and direction of your marriage, and you can do it today. Just by deciding, every time there's a gap between what I expect and what I experience, I am going to find a generous explanation. I'm going to learn to believe the best. Questions? Next week, does God have a plan for my sex life? Yep. Yep. Chris, pray for us. We'll call it a night. Thank you.